This episode is brought to you by KJK. Tired of the billable hour? KJK has a solution. The KJK GC Advantage program offers businesses comprehensive legal services in the areas of employment, corporate services, real estate, trademark, intellectual property, and estate planning, all for a set monthly fee. KJK serves as their clients' partners in business, not just their lawyers. Along with cost certainty and predictability, the KJK GC Advantage program gives clients peace of mind, knowing their projects will be handled quickly and efficiently, maximizing the return on investment on their legal spend. So don't go it alone, let KJK help. Learn more by visiting kjk.com. 614 Startups Nation, welcome to another episode of the 614 Startups Podcast, Columbus's #1 startup podcast. And I have a very special guest for you guys. I have my man, Chris Phommas, founder of Virtical, on the show. Chris, welcome.
Elio, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's good that we have a sit-down conversation on the podcast. You and I have had a chance to get to know each other outside of podcasting. And I think what you're building at Virtical is a service that thankfully is now available, accessible to founders like myself. But before we get into Virtical itself, want to get to know you a little bit better. So where are you from originally if you're not from Columbus? And then how did you come to live in Columbus, Ohio?
Yeah, so this goes all the way back to 1977. I was born in a country called Laos, in a little village in the capital city of Vientiane. We immigrated from there in 1979, and we just landed here in Columbus, Ohio, because of the circumstances.
Yeah, and so what I know about Laos, and when I hear that country, unfortunately, certain countries, and you're thinking about 70s and 60s, spark certain images. I'm thinking Laos, I'm thinking Cambodia, because I am originally from Liberia, and the reason why I came to live in the States was because of a civil war. Did that inform the decision of your family in terms of relocating here, or was that far after much of that was going on in that part of the world?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I didn't know that about you, but yeah, just to dive a little bit deeper, there was somewhat of a civil war, a regime change, and it basically limited the inhabitants that were there to they were relegated to basically not have any opportunities to thrive. And my parents made a conscious decision, after we were 6 months to a year old, and my brother, who's 18 months older than me, they grabbed us and we crossed the Mekong River, and then we landed at a refugee camp in Thailand. And then several months after that, we were part of a sponsorship program here in the United States, and that's pretty much how we ended up in Columbus. We were sponsored by a Lutheran church here downtown. I can't recall the name of it, but it's right off of what used to be 4th Street, right on the corner, and that's pretty much how it started.
Yeah, man. It's some interesting parallels there in terms of immigrating to the U.S. as a result of a civil war, time spent in a refugee camp. I was very fortunate, meaning that when we left Liberia and went to Sierra Leone, we were able to actually afford like a place to live, right? We didn't necessarily have to live in the refugee camp, but of course we had to visit family and other people who were in the refugee camp. So I understand, right? Kind of the immigrant journey and why America represents still to this day, with everything that's going on in the country, however you might feel about it, as a land of opportunity. So normally when you say I didn't know about that about you, a lot of people say that because I am thoroughly Americanized and I got rid of the accent, right? You came as a kid, so maybe that might make sense for you. I came when I was 12 years old. And so
Wow.
since you've been living in the States since you were a kid, What is like the community here of other people from Laos or other neighboring countries? Do you guys have a large population? I know for Liberians, we have a very large population that's very active in Columbus.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that immigration that occurred in the late '70s or early '80s, there was a huge influx of Laotians. So my mother works with the community quite a bit, and I don't have the specific numbers, but definitely in the tens of thousands of families that relocated here. So yes, so Laotians um, as a whole who came to the states, we're pretty spread out. I know there's huge populations in Louisiana, certain parts there, California, of course, and yeah, I mean I mean just obviously coming to the states, I don't know any better, but just talking to my parents and just understanding that journey, it's definitely it's created such an opportunity for us. As I mean, if you were still in Liberia, you definitely wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in the technology has democratized a lot, right? Where in a country like Liberia that might have fewer opportunities than we do here in the States, technology has helped democratize a lot, right? So, appreciative of the fact that those disparities that exist between the developed world and the developing world are starting to get closed in terms of the gap of opportunity simply because of what technology can now facilitate in terms of communicating across the world or if you have a voice or something to say, social media amplifying that. But one of the things I appreciate about being an immigrant, and we talk about this immigrant approach to America as the land of opportunity. I know you were very young, but how did that process, whether it's through stories from your parents, shape your view of America as the land of opportunity, and how do you think that has informed the way you've approached being an entrepreneur?
Wow, that's a good question. I never really thought about it, but I think that I mean, the way that they described how things were over there in Laos, when we made the conscious decision to leave, it's there was just, like I said before, there was no opportunity for growth or development. It became a monarchy, a political system, into a communist system, which I don't have one view or the other on that, but I know that it was very oppressive. The regime that took over, and it was during that time where where a lot of that was sweeping through most of Southeast Asia. You mentioned Cambodia and Vietnam. Those are the countries that were impacted as well. And I think that to have the perspective and understanding how impactful um, the move was for us, compared to how it could have been or would have been. Uh, I mean, it's a game changer. So something that I should mention that is, I serve on a board called Legacies of War, and that it's a nonprofit, and the mission for Legacies is to actually remove all of the uh, cluster bombs that were dropped there. There were several millions of cluster bombs that are undetonated that are still sitting as basically landmines, throughout that entire region. So that's another way that I've been able to get involved in giving back to the motherland, if you will.
Yeah, man, I completely get it, and just like the folks at the Lutheran Church, maybe 100 years ago, didn't imagine that they would be part of the journey of so many people who were looking to relocate to the United States. My experience was the same on the East Coast when we came. We came to New Jersey, and the Lutheran Church was involved in part of that transition process. I really appreciate, and I think for a lot of entrepreneurs particularly those, and many of them, like many of us, are on this journey for the first time, right? We're the first ones in our family. We're really trying to build companies that are impactful, but also have an eye to giving back, because we've experienced other people making a conscious decision to give back to us. No person is an island. So that's really inspiring, man. So, in addition, I was going to ask you, first of all, we got to get some authentic Laotian food, right? But then, number
Anytime you
two, you
want.
got to tell me a little bit more about this nonprofit. But we're going to dive into your world as an entrepreneur. So, when did you discover that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? And who or what inspires you on this entrepreneurial journey?
Well, when I first graduated from High University, I had a degree in communications with a specialization in video production. So I thought I wanted to make videos, create content. This is before social media or any sort of real internet existed, right? This is back in 2000. So, so I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I got a job at AT&T. I worked my way up, got promoted to management after, a few years. And then I got to a point where, I just felt like there was something else out there. And, I probably shouldn't say this, but I started a little side hustle, which I'm sure a lot of people do these days anyways, because of the opportunities that are out there with technology and everything else. But in my case, just to back it up a little bit, my first job out of college was as a logistics supervisor for a company that was based out in California, but they had operations here in Grove City. And I learned about the staffing industry. So come around 2010, I'm 10 years into AT&T. I had an opportunity to create a side hustle doing staffing and recruiting for a warehouse, and that's kind of how it all started. And then from there, I don't know how much you want me to get into it. I mean, I can kind of share with you the journey from there if you'd like, but that's pretty much how it started. And I ended up leaving AT&T about 4 or 5 years after. It wasn't a full on, you know, I mean, it created decent enough revenue for me to keep it going, and I had plenty of time to do my work, and everything else was done either after hours and a few calls in between during the day. But I was able to maneuver it and make it happen for several years before I decided that I could easily make this a full time thing.
Yeah, man, I love the side hustle, right? I think, you know, uh, you hear these big kind of stories, right, that really sweep through the media. I just haven't seen it happen with side hustling. I mean, it's so much attention was given to the great resignation, right? You felt like,
Yeah.
oh, there's an epic shift. But why is it, do you feel like the idea of the non-traditional path, right, of get a job, work 40 years, and retire, um, doesn't, the alternative to that, which would not necessarily be the great resignation, right? It's almost like the system quaked for a moment at the potential that it was no longer going to be the best option for people. Why do you think that side hustle, right, finding that thing that might be your transition, doesn't get a lot of play? Because I think a lot of people right now are side hustling their way into something, into a business or into a being self-employed.
Yeah, that's a really good question because I feel like so you mentioned the Great Resignation and how it really gave folks an opportunity to kind of reassess and do an appraisal on their current lives because everyone was home more. I think that folks weren't working. I, that coupled with I think technology. I think technology has been the biggest game changer. It's allowed people to be able to find their way through and get information much more faster than we ever did back in the day. I don't know what your age is. You're probably younger than me, but when I was starting out doing my side hustle, it was just the old-fashioned way. There was the internet and things of that nature, but I feel like now with all the different resources we have at our fingertips, it's just easy to find something that you love to do and really, just get into it. Yeah, so I think that having that time and having that perspective, it allowed folks to really take a step back and say, you know what, I'm not happy with my life. I want to do something different. These are my interests. So in a lot of ways, it was great for them. And then, of course, for the economy, it didn't help because of the Great Resignation, and we're still feeling the after effects of it.
Yeah, and as a guy who got his start in the staffing industry, I'm sure keeping your eye on what's happening with those trends in terms of the future of work and things like that, I know is very, very interesting for you. And probably, as you look at your businesses, you're being impacted by it as well. So you see it from both sides, both from the, somebody who's in the business of helping people find employment, but also supporting the employers who are looking for people to hire,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is a great kind of pivot to the company that you started, Virtical, which I am, very, very much interested in learning the history of. So, what is Virtical, and why did you start this company, and what problem are you solving over at Virtical?
So I will say that so Vertical is a U.S. based virtual service company. We serve the global community and creating opportunities for folks that are at a disadvantage in multiple countries. We're partnering with developing and emerging markets to help provide an opportunity for growth and equity in remote work. You know, um, so how I got started with Vertical is I was reached out or I was contacted by um, Raquel. She goes by Rocky, and it was just a solicitation email and or note on LinkedIn, and she asked me. She made an introduction. And it just so happened to be that she had a very uh, expansive skill set to be able to pretty much handle any sort of back office needs. And to back it up a little bit more, when I worked at AT&T, I went to the Philippines, and AT&T started outsourcing some of their work to some of the call centers there with the BPO, business practice outsourcing company. And I met and worked and trained a lot of those folks. And in the Philippines, they're actually the largest uh, BPO country in the world. It was India, but then things started shifting um, for whatever reasons. And I learned how they work, their culture, and I feel like they were trained very well in the past, you know 10 to 15 years. You know, companies like IBM, Accenture, obviously AT&T, Chase. A lot of those companies are outsourcing some of the basic functions and maybe even more sophisticated functions to the Philippines. IBM's another one. They've had a lot of really good training uh, with these U.S. based companies, and then some to be able to have the skill sets that they need to survive and thrive in this modern world. And that's where I think that that really made me interested in creating this company.
Yeah, serendipity is always interesting, right? Where you're maybe not necessarily thinking about building a company, but then that phone call comes in, like the phone call from Rocky, and say, "Hey, I got something here for you to take a look at." Um, I understand clearly the problem that you're solving on the side of the folks who work for Vertical. So these virtual assistants that are, for the most part, based in the Philippines, and that is the democratization of this the world that we live in now of remote work. And so, the value proposition to them, if you could break that down for me. So, I mean, if they're now the number one in the world and they get a chance to work for some of these big names, explain to me some of the challenges with working for those big names and why somebody might opt to work for Virtical, where your customer is the small business owner and your customer is the startup company that might be scaling. What are they experiencing in terms of working for those big names in experiencing that kind of training and culture that makes them a great employee? Why would somebody say, you know what, instead of working for that other company that serves the bigger names in the world, I want to work with a Vertical because of this value proposition? What are they telling you as you speak to them about that opportunity?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that we have an academy that we put all the virtual assistants in. It's a 4 to 6 week program. We basically work with them directly and give them the proper training and the proper tools to be able to understand exactly what they're doing. Um, and as I mentioned, we're a U.S. based company, and we have folks here stateside that helps with the onboarding. So I think it gives it a very natural um, flow in terms of onboarding. So so instead of working directly with like how it came to be for me with Rocky, we have folks here stateside that can kind of do the onboarding. You really get to know the end user's business, and then really understand it, and then translate it in a way that makes sense. And we're very choosy about which VAs that we have work on certain accounts just based on their skill sets. So I think we do a lot of screening that allows us to be able to make the right match, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm kind of partial, right? Because I've had a chance to experience this in real time. Because as you know, in our conversations, kind of off podcast, 614 Startups has been a solo going concern for a very long time. But as we've grown, the new challenge for me as an owner is now building a team. And I hadn't done it before. I just didn't have the skill.
I've been there, man.
Right? Because it's not as easy as it
No,
sounds.
it's
A
not.
lot of people think, if I got the money, I can go out and hire, but that is an actual particular skill. And you made mention of the fact that you guys put people through an academy to make sure that they have the tools, and you're very careful about selecting people. Let's talk about your selection process. What are the characteristics of a vertical VA?
So these days, I don't get too involved in that, but I know that Rocky, she does a lot of the recruiting there, obviously, just because she's had call center experience through and through. She was employed at IBM as well, and she's got a knack for really discovering talent or folks that have those skill sets, that has the training from these large companies that have you set up shop there. Yeah, so the Philippines aren't the only place that we actually have folks. We have folks in Dubai as well, and I think we had a few in Mexico. So our goal is to really expand that footprint, and not just rely on one, but it pretty much started in the Philippines. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question a little bit. But I think that the selection process is definitely one that we're very careful of. We started off with just a handful of folks, a couple years ago. I think now we're up to 40. So with very low turnover, we have your situations where things don't work out, but something else that's a big incentive is that we provide benefits to those folks, and that's unheard of. Um, and we're also very you know, uh, in my general company culture, in all the businesses that I have, I like to be, culture is everything for me. I mean, having flexibility and, having the ability to, to kind of thrive without micromanaging is kind of my thing. And I feel like that culture has bled over into vertical, which I can see that that in their work.
Yeah, well, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I mean, we've just discussed, kind of the problems that you're solving for the employee side, whether it be the folks in Mexico who are virtual assistants, or in the Philippines, and the kind of work culture that you're creating to be the employer of choice, right? Because they can go anywhere,
Sure.
right? It sounds like there are many opportunities for remote work now. A lot of companies competing for the same talent across the world. And so you're establishing Vertical as that company that they are going to want to work for. But I want to come now after the break to the other side of the equation, the folks who you're actually helping here or wherever in the world they might be who are in need of a virtual assistant. So, folks, thank you so much. You're listening to my conversation with Chris Phommas, founder of Virtical. We'll be right back after these messages. Support for the 614 Startups podcast comes from Nationwide. Nationwide's mission is to protect people, businesses, and futures with extraordinary care. To help fulfill that mission, Nationwide is looking to invest its $350 million venture capital investment fund in insurtechs that will help them create new and exciting products and solutions to meet the needs of their customers. If you're interested in partnering with Nationwide's venture capital team, visit nationwideventures.com to learn more. Again, the website is nationwideventures.com. Nationwide is on your side. This episode is brought to you by Rev1. Rev1's mission is to help entrepreneurs build great companies. As you navigate the waters of business entrepreneurship, you don't have to go it alone. A strategic partnership with Rev1 connects innovators to the talent, customers, space, and funding you need when you need it. Get started with Rev1 Startup Studio by visiting rev1ventures.com to learn more. Again, the website is rev1ventures.com. 614 Startups Nation, welcome back to my conversation with Chris Phommas, founder of Virtical. Chris, listen, man, when I came across, it was the email, right? And I get my fair share of emails. It was the email that I needed at the time it came, because I was up to my eyeballs, right? And for many founders, they are probably in a similar place to where I was and probably still am as I'm making adjustments. But let's talk about the problem that you're solving for your paying customer,
Sure.
the folks who are in need of the services that Vertical provides. What do you help those people solve? What challenges are you seeing, and how do you help them address those challenges?
Yeah, I think when it comes to you asked about your value proposition earlier. I feel like the value that we add is very beneficial for for your average entrepreneur. We target folks who are just starting out, all the way up to small and maybe even medium sized businesses. We haven't gotten there yet, but entrepreneurs and small businesses are pretty much our bread and butter. And you know talking to how we can add value, I think that from a cost perspective, if you're just getting started in your business, in this modern world that we live in, there's so much information, there's so much you have to do to be able to find and manage your day to day, your that work life, when starting out as an entrepreneur, creating a new business, if from you know billing to creating invoices, creating processes. There's a lot of back office functions that I feel like really makes life easier for those folks who may not have the knowledge or the time to be able to get through some of those things. And that's where I think affordability is a huge part. Our our packages, and we have special packages that we offer as well that can certainly be advantageous to those folks that are looking to you know get into this world of business with with nominal costs.
Yeah, so I mean, you have freelance sites like, let's say, Upwork or Fiverr, right? And you could go on there and hire virtual assistants. And I attempted to do that. And one of the biggest challenges is I'm already busy.
Yeah.
And now I'm hiring somebody. And one of the things that a lot of people who haven't hired people for the first time realize, you're responsible for training that person. Um, One of the things that I appreciate about working with Virtical is that I don't have to do that. The US based, like you call it, I think, a project manager, my project manager, I don't even want to say her name because she's so fantastic. I don't want you guys to take her away from me. But that was one of the key differentiations that I appreciated the most, was that that responsibility was taking off of my hands. And I had a project manager whose only job is to understand what I need and then appropriately train on my behalf the virtual assistant who's going to be taking on the task themselves. Why did you guys, kind of approach it that way? Because that was a refreshing difference. And for people who've kind of tried to hire virtual assistants and have sworn it off, I think it might give them a reason to have a second look.
Yeah, I think that you hit it right on the head. That's our business model, is that we want folks here stateside, and we're creating jobs stateside to be able to help, facilitate that. And, there are times where, our customers would rather deal with the project managers directly as opposed to working with the folks, overseas. And that's completely fine. I think that's a preference. But I think eventually what it turns into is that there's a natural handoff, and most communication can be done over text messaging, through a Slack channel, or even obviously over email. And after a while, it doesn't become a problem, but it's our natural instinct to ensure that that there's a seamless uh, interaction between the vertical team and and the end user.
Yeah, and so let's talk about the impact, right? So we kind of made the case for why there might be a need. People might be stressed out, frustrated. You might be doing administrative tasks when they otherwise might be having client meetings and driving revenue, right? It's one reason to do
Yep.
it. The differentiation between trying to go out and screen the person, train the persons. Much of that has been done for you by Virtical via um, this your business model.
Yep.
But let's talk about the impact, because that's all well and good. We haven't gotten into pricing because you guys do it in a way that I think is unique as well. But what is the impact of a well trained and in sync, meaning they just understand you, right? What is the impact of that on the business and personal life of an entrepreneur?
Well, I think it makes or it will make their lives much easier. As I mentioned before, if you can, you know, you get rid of some of those mundane tasks that that we all are accustomed to doing. I think it's great. You can do it yourself, but once you start scaling the business, you're going to need help. To be able to manage your calendar, set up appointments, create a proper sales funnel so you can go after and get that business, and basically, vet, potential customers or leads that you have. And I think that having a back office, as we do, you know, uh, the 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 impact of having that back office support, that's something that I feel like I would have had much more success if I would have leaned into it a little bit more, and we have. And I don't know if you know this or not, but for the other businesses, we use Vertical for pretty much all major back office functions.
Yeah, and so then So give me an example of how it's impacting you, right? So you're running multiple companies, and maybe this is kind of where you can jump into where Vertical stands in terms of your total portfolio. But how is that helping you be a better founder, a better entrepreneur?
Yeah. So yeah. So the first company is that I started was Workline Solutions. That's a staffing and recruiting agency. Um, I've we've been running that since 2010, and when we discovered that we were seeing a huge influx of work coming from our new customers, we needed a solution to really handle some of the back office billing, keeping track of AP and AR, doing some recruiting, and the second company I started is called Revcon Management. It's a construction management company. Um, we operate in 17 different markets, and just keeping up with that growth and with that volume, I feel like you know, was so helpful in scaling the business. And just going back to Workline Solutions, we have three different locations here in Columbus, Ohio, in Worcester, Ohio, and in Fullerton, California. So, so having the vertical team be involved in a lot of those functions that we had behind the scenes, I mean, that just made it was a game changer. It allowed us to free up more time with you know obviously business development, and just finding time to spend with with family.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, it's worth repeating though, and I think for me, some of the things are like are the intangibles, right? So, getting used to giving up control. Um, I have this habit, even with my virtual assistant, of if I feel that a task can be done quicker just by me shooting an email, I have the tendency, because I haven't had somebody to help me for a long time, to still want to do that. And it's important habit to break as a founder because you can't do it all as the company scales. And so that's what working with a virtual assistant has taught me. Number two is systems thinking. And in order for my work with my virtual assistant to be productive, even though it can be efficient, but for it to also be productive, is that we need to be put together a scalable and repeatable process.
Yep.
So that as the company grows, we can plug in more people and the system just continues to produce, right? And then, understanding where people's strengths are. I think one of the great things about working with a company like Vertical is that you have all of these skills under one roof. So you don't necessarily have to, go maybe to a freelancer, maybe even if you hire a virtual assistant individually, within the packages, you don't necessarily have to have any one skill set be the solo primary skill set of the person that you've hired, especially if you can only afford, at least initially, to hire one person. And so that's really what I think some of the values are for me that I've found working with a virtual assistant, letting go of some of those old habits, uh, having access to people with multiple skills, and then really, really focused on systems thinking. And my project manager is really focused on helping me break those habits, and it's been absolutely a wonderful investment. And so, what I'd like to do, Chris, is take one final break. When we come back, we're gonna get some parting thoughts from you, and then we're gonna wrap this podcast.
Okay. Great.
So, yeah, so folks, you're listening to my conversation with Chris Phommas, founder of Vertical. We'll be right back. Today's episode is sponsored by the City of Dublin's Division of Economic Development. The City of Dublin provides world-class, tailored business services and resources to ensure the best possible environment for businesses to recruit talent and thrive. Because of this strategic focus and commitment to employer growth, Dublin is the only accredited economic development organization in the state of Ohio. The City of Dublin supports startups and entrepreneurs by offering targeted resources and training programs to grow companies that are financially sustainable, innovative, and committed to creating jobs. Learn how other businesses depend on Dublin. Visit thriveindublinohio.com. 614 Startups Nation, welcome back for our final segment of this particular podcast. You've been listening to my conversation with Chris Phommas, founder of Virtical. All right, Chris. You kind of touched on in the previous segment that you are part of a conglomerate of companies, if I can actually call it that. And Virtical is just the newest, right, of this family of companies or portfolio of companies. And you had the opportunity to kind of locate this business anywhere you wanted to. But why did you decide to stay here in Columbus and headquarter the company here?
Yeah, so obviously Columbus is home. This is our Plymouth Rock, if you will. I did move away to Los Angeles. I was part of a startup. I invested into a startup out there. It was a digital media company, and that's kind of where I cut my teeth. Living in LA, the Silicon Beach scene. I think Snapchat was around that time. It's when all the digital media was becoming a very big thing on YouTube and all that fun stuff. But after a few years, I realized, and of course, with family being back here, my wife and my one daughter at the time, she wanted, my wife really wanted to get back closer to family, and of course, I feel like Columbus is just a very welcoming. You got the seasons here, and of course, your family was a big part of it, and family is everything to me. But in terms of where we were, and coming back to Columbus, since then I was able to start RevCon as I mentioned before, and then Virtical came after that, and then we recently started a third-party logistics company called Workline 3PL. It was a natural transition just because Workline Solutions, was my first baby, and we specialize in staffing recruiting for warehousing. For the most part, now we're transitioning, doing a lot of other professional types of recruiting and clerical and pretty much everything. We cover it all, but one thing that we do know really well is logistics. So there's four main companies in the portfolio, and we've invested into a handful of other companies. We recently invested into a company called Moria Systems. It's an IT managed service provider, and that's one of the companies that we're really excited about. And we're excited about all of them, but that's the latest and greatest. And there's a few other small investments that we've made with other digital media companies, based in California. And so it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, that's wonderful, man. And the more businesses that we can attract and grow and support here in Columbus is absolutely essential to a healthy ecosystem. So, I'm excited, to have you on this podcast and to be launching my journey into building a team with Virtical. Very excited about that. But you've done this a couple of different times, right? Started off as a side hustle, then transitioned into your full-time thing. Your holding company has multiple portfolio companies, and they're, folks like me, folks who are probably earlier than me, just starting their journey, and might look to somebody like yourself and say, wow, this is somebody that, has achieved what I want to achieve. And I always like to ask this question before we wrap. If you could go back, or if you have one piece of advice for somebody that you might be mentoring, what would that thing be that you would tell them that's necessary to grow a successful company?
Man, I would say soft skills are highly important, especially from a customer service standpoint. I've been a huge proponent of great customer service. I feel like if you can learn that part of it, and really understand your customer, know how to find the best customers, which, of course, it doesn't always happen, but essentially, if you can master the art of customer service and be able to build the right processes, and I think the vertical team is definitely a group that can help with a lot of back office functions, as I've mentioned several times now. But I think having processes buttoned up and understanding the nuances of how to run a proper business and in a very ethical way. I'd say that those are the main pillars.
Yeah, man. I really appreciate you saying that about soft skills. I think a lot of times in the business world, when they're writing articles, a lot of times you'll see conversations about the technology, um, or you'll really see, big splashes about how much funding was raised. I think one of the things that gets overlooked is relationships, right? And that's really what soft skills are all about, is about building relationships. And I had dinner with somebody, and this is kind of my final word on this to kind of piggyback on what you just said, which is, he had a conversation about, kind of what it would take to take his business to the next level. And after he explained to me what he did, I said, man, listen, you're going to need to do prospecting, right? You need to going to go out and find new customers. But I think it's going to require you to deepen relationships with your existing customers,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
soft skills for both sides, right? I mean, you have to be able to work with people, properly communicate in a way where where it's effective. I know that certain people just aren't built that way, but I feel like that's been kind of the secret to my success is to I think organization. That's one that I didn't bring up either. There's so many of them, right? But I think being organized and being diligent in what you do, responding to emails, you know, setting those reminders and ensuring that you are following up. I think follow up. I mean, I could probably write a book on, and I haven't mastered anything, right? This is just my experience. So I'm the master of nothing. I'm kind of a jack of all trades at this point. But if there's a few things that I feel like would be impactful to how you can develop your business or develop your skills, I think that having those main pillars of just soft skills, being organized, follow up, that's how you execute.
I appreciate that, Chris. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, man. And thank you for all that you're doing to build companies here in Columbus and be part of this startup community. All right, 614 Startups Nation. That was my conversation with Chris Phommas, founder of Virtical. Until next time, peace. That's a wrap, folks. You can find this and all our episodes on our website, 614startups.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and all your favorite podcasting platforms. Don't forget to subscribe and write a review. If you'd like updates sent directly to your inbox, you can sign up for our weekly newsletter on the website. To engage in the 614 Startups community, follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 614 Startups on all platforms and join the conversation. For sponsorship opportunities and collaborations, email us at info@614startups.com.